China is open for business. That's the message President Xi Jinping is trying to sell at a big trade expo this week, while his country fights an escalating trade war with the United States. President Xi on Monday kicked off the first ever China International Import Expo with a promise.
China will lower tariffs, make customs clearance more convenient, reduce institutional costs in the import sector, and speed up the development of new business models.
Thousands of foreign companies have flocked to the expo in Shanghai, hoping to find a foothold in the world's second largest economy, with products from coffee to cars to crude oil. Big players like Google, Starbucks, and Intel also making a showing. But as Reuters' Ben Blanchard reports, some may be here for other reasons.
If you speak to some of the people involved in this import fair, they've been telling us that China has been making it very clear to a lot of companies, especially major Western companies, that they really don't have a choice about attending. And if they don't attend, then life will be made a little bit more difficult for them.
The expo comes as Beijing is under fire from countries like the United States, which feel they're getting the short end of the trade relationship. President Xi seems to be trying to change the conversation, emphasizing free trade and vowing to open up sectors from education to telecoms, although critics say the event is long on symbolism and short on substance.
Today at Xi's speech, we didn't really see any particularly new policies that he'd rolled out. He really made the same old promises that they always make about we will continue to open the market more, we will continue to provide better access and more protection for foreign companies in China, but without many specifics.
Meanwhile, the world is watching the expo for any hints of what may come next in the Beijing-Washington trade dispute. U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to meet President Xi this month. He's threatened to slap tariffs on another $267 billion worth of Chinese imports if the two countries fail to reach a deal.
Apple threatening to lose its trillion-dollar status Friday after shares of the iPhone maker plunged. A day after it warned sales of its iPhone, iPad, and other products for the crucial holiday season would likely come up short of Wall Street expectations. Reuters correspondent Stephen Nellis.
Investors watching this quarter really closely for the forecast because they want to know if Apple is going to sell a whole lot of iPhones and iPads and other stuff over the holidays. This is traditionally the biggest single quarter in all of Apple's fiscal year. It's people buying presents for the holiday season, and it's a make or break time, and Apple's saying it might be a break.
We have the strongest lineup by far.
In an interview with Reuters, CEO Tim Cook blamed the dim forecast on weakness in emerging markets, volatile foreign exchange rates, and the timing around the release of its new iPhones.
One of the reasons Apple gave for the gloomy forecast for the holiday season is the fact that it actually sold more phones than it usually would have in this quarter that just ended, and that's because the iPhone XS and XS Max actually went on sale in late September, so there were several days of people who are super fans of Apple buying up those phones and actually making the results this quarter a little bit better than analysts had expected, which the company says is actually going to make next quarter's results potentially a little bit worse.
The fall wiped out about $70 billion in the value of Apple shares, while other big names in the tech world sold off too, like Facebook and Alphabet. But Apple was the biggest drag on all the major U.S. stock indexes.
Actresses Eva Longoria, America Ferrera, and Zoe Saldana headlining a campaign event Sunday aimed at rallying Hispanic support for Florida Democratic gubernatorial candidate Andrew Gillum.
You know, we're here with Latino Victory Project today, which increases Latino political power.
The push coming in the final days of the 2018 congressional midterm elections, and an exclusive Reuters Ipsos poll finding Hispanic Americans are more fired up to vote this year than in 2014, and their enthusiasm surpasses the average likely U.S. voter.
My grandmother, as a single mother, came here for better opportunities, worked in factories for 25 years. And you know what she did? She taught us to vote.
The poll also found that Hispanic voters are more than twice as inclined to support Democrats over Republicans in the House of Representatives. Voter registration groups are using Republican President Donald Trump's anti-immigrant diatribes as an opportunity to drive voters of Latin American descent to the polls. Reuters found 36% of Hispanic voters said they were certain to vote, up from 27% in the last congressional midterm elections in 2014. Among likely Hispanic voters, 60% said they would support a Democrat for the House, and 32% said they would back a Republican. These voters could play a crucial role in several races, from tight Senate battles in Arizona and Texas, along with the Senate and governor's race in Florida.
No crime, no chaos, and no caravans.
The midterm closing messages from the de facto leaders of both parties couldn't be more stark. One president warning against fear, the other weaponizing it.
They do this every election cycle. Try to terrify folks.
Unvetted illegal aliens trying to flood into our country.
They're telling you the existential threat to America is a bunch of poor refugees 1,000 miles away.
Overwhelming your schools, depleting your resources, and endangering your community.
President Trump focusing on immigration in the final stretch, casting as his foil a caravan of migrants heading to the southern border.
Go home and see tonight what our great military is doing on the border. Wait till you see. Go home and enjoy it.
A maneuver former President Obama, campaigning in Florida Friday, condemned as a political stunt.
They're even taking our brave troops away from their families for a political stunt at the border. And the men and women of our military deserve better than that.
The 44th president says that America's character is up for a vote in Tuesday's election.
You can vote for a politics that's decent, for a politics that's honest.
And I heard him talk about telling the truth. He was talking about you have to tell the truth. And yet 28 times he said you can keep your doctor if you like your doctor.
One place both presidents seem to agree the economy is robust.
We have now the hottest economy in the world.
Of course, they depart on where that recovery began.
So when you hear all this talk about economic miracles right now, remember who started it.
This battle-scarred building was an iconic hotel during Lebanon's golden age. Now the Grand Sofar is coming back to life thanks to an artist on a mission. British painter Tom Young studies the history of abandoned buildings in Lebanon, witnesses to the country's civil war. Then he creates paintings based on old photographs, architecture and even people's memories. Lebanon has no law to protect its historic buildings, and it's losing them at an alarming rate.
In Lebanon, that identity is under threat because of this destruction of both architecture and human memory. My projects are about counteracting that process.
Young's paintings at the Grand Sofar depict events that happened there before the Civil War broke out in 1975. Celebrities like Egyptian actor Omar Sharif would party there, and Young found a photo of 80-year-old Samira Sayeg's wedding at the venue.
I went back 52 years back, the day of my wedding, So it was so emotional, and I was at the same time very happy.
Yang, who has lived in Lebanon for 9 years, has held exhibitions in other abandoned buildings, like this villa in Beirut. They're free of charge and include community events to stir public interest in their history.